Sydney built her entire career on the promise of digital perfection and flawless aesthetics. When a verified venture capitalist offers a massive brand sponsorship, the opportunity feels like the ultimate validation. The investor profile is flawless, projecting immense wealth from a sleek corporate suite. But while organizing the shared asset drive, Sydney spots a hidden folder. Opening it reveals raw photographs of a rugged farmhand named Dakota, completely contradicting the polished aesthetic. The metadata shows the images were taken years before the account even existed. As the screen casts harsh shadows, Sydney realizes the empire is built on a stolen identity. The digital mask is slipping, and the truth is far more dangerous than a simple rejection.
The glow of 3 monitors illuminated the dimly lit home office, casting harsh blue shadows across the walls. Outside, the distant hum of Dallas traffic provided a steady, rhythmic backdrop, but inside, the silence was absolute. Sydney sat perfectly still, her eyes locked on the center screen. A lucrative brand sponsorship email from a verified venture capitalist waited for her final approval. This deal was supposed to be the turning point, the moment her years of relentless content creation finally translated into mainstream financial security and industry respect. The investor profile was immaculate, projecting an aura of effortless wealth and digital supremacy. It was the exact validation she had spent years chasing to elevate her platform. She clicked the shared asset drive to organize the final contract files. The folder structure was pristine, except for a single hidden directory tucked beneath the primary marketing assets. Inside rested one file named Profile Copy 2. Sydney frowned, her analytical mind immediately catching the anomaly. The naming convention was sloppy, entirely unlike the meticulous branding of the investor. She double-clicked the file. The screen flooded with raw, unedited photographs. There were no filters, no professional lighting, no curated aesthetics. The images showed a rugged farmhand working in a dusty field, the face partially obscured by a worn hat. The metadata tag read Dakota. The creation date predated the investor account by nearly a decade. This was the first crack in the perfect illusion. A sudden chime broke the silence. A direct message popped up from the investor profile. The automated text-to-speech notification read the message aloud in a smooth, synthetic baritone. Sydney, the final verification requires immediate access to the primary banking portal to secure the transfer. Sydney stared at the raw farmhand photo, her finger hovering over the mouse. "This is not a stylistic choice," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly in the empty room. She pulled up the polished avatar, comparing the sharp, confident eyes of the digital phantom with the weary gaze of the farmhand. Who are the people behind this mask? The synthetic voice chimed again, more urgent this time. Portal access required within 5 minutes to maintain the sponsorship tier. The aesthetic was flawless, but the foundation was built on a completely stolen life. Sydney minimized the banking prompt and opened a deep metadata extraction tool. The digital sanctuary she had trusted was suddenly feeling like a trap, and the pristine investor was just a ghost wearing a stolen face. The countdown timer on the screen began to tick down, each second echoing in the quiet room, as she prepared to dig deeper into the fabricated empire.
Sydney ignored the flashing banking prompt, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She needed undeniable proof before the timer expired. She pulled up the raw farmhand photos again, treating them as crucial digital artifacts. The first image, tagged with the name Dakota, contained embedded coordinates pointing to a rural plot in Dallas County. She dug deeper into the shared drive and found another derivative file, a raw log for Dakota buried in a directory named Copy 2, confirming the geolocation matched a defunct agricultural zone. The polished investor profile claimed to operate from a sleek downtown high-rise, but the LLC registration documents she pulled from public records listed a completely different corporate address. It pointed to a commercial tech park on the outskirts of the city, a place she knew had been vacant for years. The digital mask was slipping, revealing a physical ghost. Grabbing her heavy coat, Sydney left the safety of her home office. The drive through the dark Dallas streets felt like crossing into enemy territory, the streetlights flickering like warning signals against the night sky. She knew that stepping into this physical space meant crossing a line she could never uncross. When she arrived at the commercial tech park, the building was a monolith of dark glass and concrete, looming silently in the industrial zone. She slipped through an unlocked side entrance, her footsteps echoing in the sterile, fluorescent-lit corridors. The air smelled of industrial cleaner and stale dust, a stark contrast to the polished digital world she was used to. She navigated by the suite numbers, her heart pounding against her ribs. When she reached the designated door, the polished brass plaque bearing the investor name was tarnished and peeling. But it was what sat in the hallway that made her blood run cold. A standard yellow janitor cart was parked directly outside the fake suite. On the handle hung a faded maintenance badge. The name printed on it was Hunter. Sydney stared at the abandoned suite door, her breath catching in the quiet corridor. The digital phantom had a physical anchor, and he was cleaning the very floors where her data was being harvested. The address was real, but the empire was a ghost. She looked at the mop bucket, then back at the dark glass of the suite door. If he was just a janitor here, who was cleaning up her data? The synthetic baritone voice from her phone suddenly chimed in the silent hallway, reading a new notification aloud. The digital trap was no longer just on her screen, it was standing right outside the door.
Sydney locked her apartment door, the deadbolt sliding home with a heavy metallic thud that did absolutely nothing to quiet her racing heart. The drive back from the abandoned commercial tech park had been a blur of rearview mirror glances and paranoid lane changes. Every pair of headlights in the Dallas night felt like a pursuit. Every shadow stretching across the asphalt seemed to hide a watcher. She dropped her keys on the kitchen counter, the sharp clatter echoing in the quiet space, and retreated to her home office. She plunged the room into darkness, save for the harsh blue glow of her 3 monitors. The sterile scent of industrial cleaner and stale dust from the janitor closet still seemed to cling to her heavy coat, a physical reminder of the ghost she had chased. She sat down in her ergonomic chair, her fingers trembling slightly as she woke the screens. The investor portal was still open, the countdown timer long expired, leaving a blank, waiting void on the primary display. The silence in the apartment was heavy, pressing against her ears. Suddenly, a new notification chimed, shattering the quiet. The synthetic baritone voice filled the silent room, reading a direct message with chilling precision. The message demanded immediate upload of her government identification and primary routing numbers to a secure verification portal, claiming she needed to prove she was not stealing proprietary assets from the corporate suite. Sydney froze, her breath catching in her throat. Attached to the message was a high-resolution, time-stamped photograph. It was her car, parked in the tech lot, taken from the exact elevated angle of the janitor closet window. The digital ghost was not just hiding behind a fabricated profile, he was actively watching her movements, documenting her physical location. Her eyes darted to the secondary monitor, where she had left the raw metadata logs open. The face of Dakota, the rugged farmhand, stared back at her from the stolen co-file copy. 2 lives, 1 stolen face, and now a physical watcher tracking her every move. He knew she had been there, she whispered to the empty room, the realization turning her blood to ice. The polished avatar of the venture capitalist was a complete fabrication, but the threat was terrifyingly real and entirely focused on her. The message blinked urgently at the bottom of the screen, demanding her identification or threatening severe consequences for her trespass. The trap had finally snapped shut. She was not just investigating a simple online scam, she was trapped inside a digital panopticon, and the invisible janitor held the keys to her entire identity. If she refused, he would destroy her career and reputation. If she complied, she would hand over the very real data needed to erase her completely. The glowing screen cast long, prison-like shadows across the wall as the upload prompt demanded her final submission. Years of meticulously crafted content, brand partnerships, and digital validation were suddenly balanced on the edge of a knife. She had built her entire online persona on the promise of authenticity, yet she was being blackmailed by a master of fabrication. The irony was bitter, tasting like ash in her mouth. She looked at the timestamp on the photograph of her car. It was taken less than an hour ago. The proximity of the threat made the digital world feel suffocatingly small. There was no firewall thick enough to keep this specific predator out. He had already breached the physical perimeter of her life, turning her safe haven into a stage for his twisted game.
The synthetic baritone voice echoed through the dark office, relentlessly demanding her government identification. The upload prompt pulsed with a harsh, rhythmic red light, casting long, dancing shadows across Sydney's trembling hands. The digital panopticon was waiting for her to surrender her reality. She stared at the blinking cursor, her finger hovering over the trackpad. The polished avatar of the venture capitalist stared back from the corner of the screen, a flawless mask built entirely on the stolen life of a rugged farmhand. "I will not feed the ghost," she whispered, her voice cutting through the sterile silence of the apartment. She yanked her hand away from the trackpad, breaking the spell of the blinking prompt. Instead of uploading her identity, she triggered the system screenshot shortcut. The screen flashed brightly, capturing the extortion message and the time-stamped photograph of her car parked at the abandoned tech park. She quickly opened her secondary, trusted laptop, keeping it disconnected from the compromised main network. The blue glow of the second screen illuminated her determined expression as she navigated to the investor portal backend through a secure, isolated browser. With rapid, decisive keystrokes, she terminated all active sessions, severing the Phantom's direct line to her hardware and locking him out of her local network. The red upload prompt on her main monitor instantly froze, replaced by a generic connection error message. But Sydney was not done. She opened a new window and navigated to the platform's independently verified official support portal. This was the one channel the scammer could not manipulate with fake corporate documents or stolen credentials. She attached the screenshots of the extortion, the raw metadata logs of the farmhand photos, and the geolocation data pointing to the defunct agricultural zone. She typed a concise, factual report detailing the impersonation and the physical surveillance threat, keeping her language clinical and precise. She hit submit. Ticket received, trust and safety team reviewing. The automated support voice chimed from the secondary laptop. The progress bar crawled across the screen, an agonizingly slow crawl of digital self-defense. A green checkmark finally appeared, confirming the evidence was locked in the secure queue. She had weaponized the very system he used to hide. For a brief, fleeting second, Sydney allowed herself to exhale. The tension in her shoulders dropped slightly, and the oppressive weight in the room lifted just a fraction. She had done everything right, followed the proper channels, and secured the proof. But the victory was entirely fleeting. Before she could close the browser, her main monitor flickered violently. The connection error vanished, replaced by a new, unencrypted text file that forced itself open on her desktop. The synthetic baritone voice did not chime this time. Instead, the speakers emitted a low, static hum that slowly resolved into the sound of heavy boots walking on gravel. Sydney's breath hitched in her chest. The audio was not a pre-recorded message. It was a live feed. The static cleared, revealing the distinct, rhythmic squeak of a janitor's mop bucket wheel rolling across a hard floor. The sound was coming from the hallway directly outside her apartment door. The digital trap had just become a physical siege, and the ghost was no longer hiding behind a screen.
The heavy boots outside her door stopped, and the rhythmic squeak of the mop bucket faded into the distant hum of Dallas traffic. Sydney sat frozen in the harsh blue glow of her monitors, but the silence stretched unbroken. The digital ghost had retreated. Hours bled into the early morning, and the harsh digital glare was slowly replaced by soft light filtering through the blinds. Her secondary laptop chimed with the official support portal resolution. The automated voice confirmed the account was permanently terminated and evidence was forwarded to local authorities. Attached was the final decrypted archive, the master directory of the stolen identity. Sydney opened the folder to see the original file log labeled Copy 2, containing the complete digital harvest of Dakota. Every raw photograph and intimate detail of a real life had been meticulously scraped to build the flawless venture capitalist. Hunter had consumed an entire human existence to fuel his empire. The physical threat was over, but the psychological sanctuary was permanently compromised. Her home office, once a temple of curated perfection, now felt like a contaminated space. Sydney opened her blog's administrative dashboard and highlighted the entire site archive. Her finger hovered over the trackpad before she pressed delete. A progress bar crawled across the screen as the platform purged her digital footprint. "The perfect copy is gone," she said, closing the laptop. "Now I just have to live in the original." The screens went black, reflecting only the soft morning light that now filled the room, unfiltered and entirely real. Sydney stood up from her chair, her joints stiff from the long night. She walked over to the window and pulled the blinds up, letting the warm Dallas sun wash over the silent monitors. The heavy coat she had worn to the abandoned tech park still hung on the door, but the oppressive weight it carried was gone. She took a deep breath, feeling the steady rhythm of her own heartbeat, and turned away from the desk to make a simple cup of coffee, stepping fully into the quiet, authentic world that waited just beyond the screen.